Hare Krishna. Om Jnanat Mandasya Jnanasana Shlakya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namah. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namane Namaste Saraswata Deve Gauravani Pacharani Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskachai Desatarane Srila Prabhupada Ki. So we continue today with chapter 20. We have heard the descriptions of the rainy season, and now we will go to the descriptions of autumn. So we will discuss today chapter 12, verses 17 to 31. And today I will first read text 17. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Loka Bandhu Sume Yesu Vidyutas Chalasarita Stayam Sasakro Kamenya Pushe Sugunis Iva. Though the clouds are the well-wishing friends of all living beings, the lightning, fickle in its affinities, moved from one group of clouds to another, like lusty women, unfaithful even to the virtuous man. So, we will first recap the previous analogies that and I want you to participate. The first analogy was about the sky covered with lightning. What does that represent? Does anyone remember? Sky covered with lightning.
Soul covered with the modes.
The modes, yes. The soul is covered by the modes. Goodness, passion, and ignorance. And may remember, goodness. Goodness represents the lightning. And passion was represented by the thunder. And ignorance represents the clouds. So we have then the next one. The sun evaporates the water, becomes clouds, and it rains down. What does that represent?
It represents the king or the government collecting taxes.
Yes, and they collect taxes and then they redistribute to the citizens, to the needs. And then we have heard of clouds shaken by lightning and fierce wind. What did that represent? Clouds shaken by lightning and fierce winds.
The compassionate people who give their lives for the benefit of others, just like the clouds are blown apart and diminish their rain and disappear.
Yeah, so the saintly persons who give their lives for others' pleasure. And then there was the earth emaciated by summer heat, and now it is nourished by the rain.
Like a materialistic person who performs austerities, emaciated, and when he gets results of those austerities, and then he again becomes, he starts becoming more nourished.
Yeah, he becomes happy. So, but that's not what devotees want. It's an unfavorable comparison for devotees, that we are doing penances for tapo divyam, devotional service. And then the next is a favorable for devotees. The frog is croaking. What does that mean? The frog is croaking in that analogy. That
It's, I think it was comparison with brahmacharis who start chanting the Vedic mantras.
yes, after hearing the bell, they start to recite their mantras. Sadhana. In the morning, we hear the bell, we go up, and then we have our morning sadhana. And then the next one is again unfavorable for devotees. So insignificant streams which were dry, they swell and they overflow their banks and stray from their courses. What does that mean?
It's compared to the pleasure that a materialistic person gets from sense gratification that he seems to be enjoying for some time, like those rivulets flow for a short time and they're agitated, like he's agitated by his senses. But then when the rainy season's over, they just dry up as quickly as they came. So his sense pleasures quickly come to an end and he's left dry and disappointed.
Yes, they flourish and they deviate from the course because they are engaging in sense gratification instead of devotional service, and then they become dry again. And now the next one is the new green grass, red Indragopa insects appear, so many, and white mushrooms. So what does that mean?
Like a royal parade of a king.
Okay, someone newly became rich, or a parade of kingly opulence. So we can use many of these analogies when we give class, but at least a favorable one. But the next one is an unfavorable. The wealth of grains gives joy to the farmers and happiness to the rich people. So why is that so?
Maharaj, this is those fields created remorse in the hearts of those who were too proud to engage in farming and who failed to understand how everything is managed so well under the control of the Lord.
Yes, the materialistic people become unhappy when they see renunciants go back to Godhead. They become envious. Yes, they become envious. Also on the materialistic viewpoint, yes, if there is more produce and if the farmers get a nice harvest, then the rich people, they become unhappy because the price is going down. They want artificially the price going up. Next one is a favorable example. From the rain, all creatures become attractive when the rain falls. So it's a favorable one.
Devotee becomes attractive by performing devotional service.
And he becomes beautiful, Vaikuntha man, Srila Prabhupada said. So we need to know these analogies for our exams. But there were a few more. When the river joins the ocean, the waves become agitated. What does that mean? A hint, it's about a yogi.
Maharaj, an immature yogi becomes agitated because he is still tainted by lust and attached to the objects of sense gratification.
Yes, it's about the yoga who is weak in his practice. He becomes disturbed by material desires. And then there are the mountains. The mountains are repeatedly struck by rain, and but they remain unagitated.
That an advanced devotee is not disturbed, even though there may be many adverse situations happening in his life.
Yes, when a devotee becomes attacked by reversals, he remains peaceful. We spoke about Dhruva Maharaj, fourth canto, who was like a mountain, and all the dirty things were rained off of the mountain, so all the arrows were washed that were covering him were washed away his incompetency. So when he's tested by danger, all his incompetency is removed. Now, another example we discussed is how the roads are overgrown by grass. What does that mean?
And this is Brahmanas not studying the Vedas and the scriptures.
Right. Thank you. So now we continue with the next analogy. I read the verse again. Yes.
There was like one more analogy of the glowworms.
Yeah, the glowworms. Yes. Yeah, the glowworms that which are insignificant. They come up with all their false speculations and philosophy because the great light of the sages is not there. Thank you.
Arash,
yeah.
Can I ask a question in relation to that verse? After hearing the recording yesterday of the class,
yeah,
you mentioned something about the scriptures of the atheists. And I was wondering, what are those? What are the scriptures of the atheists? Can you give some examples?
Scriptures of the atheists. Of course, Sankaracharya is certainly one of them. All their philosophy. And then we have, of course, Buddhism is also preaching atheism. These are also scriptures that, and there are, so many others who have their own philosophies, which, and they want to get Krishna out of the picture, God out of the picture. That also Christianity to a certain extent, that some are really impersonalist. Although it's a personal God. It may surprise you. I was in 2004 at the ISKCON communication meetings in Villaggio Hare Krishna in Italy. And there we invited Monsignor Machado. Monsignor Machado, he studied in America, got a PhD, and in his PhD he explained that Bhagavad Gita was nonsense. That was his PhD. Because he is Indian, but he got a Christian education, and so he knew the Indian philosophies. But later on, he was moved to Rome, to the Vatican, to have the relationships with Hindus. So he was invited, and we asked him, "What is your concept of God? What's your form of God you accept?" And he said, we accept the form of God that Moses saw on the mountain in the bushes. The hell light, the light of Brahman, that they accept as form. That I was surprised because I've been a Roman Catholic for many years, and then you hear such a thing, which I did underscribe or agree with, as a Catholic. It's interesting that covered impersonalist, that how is possible. So you see that in many religions, they say God has no form. That's impersonalism. We find it in so many forms. Yeah, that's most people who present them as religionists, they are impersonalists. And that's so many scriptures. And Krishna empowers them to write, and to prove that God is impersonal. Interesting. It's Krishna's mind. Thank you. Does that help, Mother Prabhupada?
Yeah, Maharaj, so you would say that even somebody who believes in an impersonal conception of God, they're still atheists?
That, I would not say that, but if they think God is a person, but like this Machado, he said God is energy. But we see that many times also. There are many kinds of so-called Vaishnavas, that the Ramanandis and others, and they believe that, yes, they believe in Krishna and so on, but higher than Krishna is Brahman. So they are covered up materialists. And there are so many in India. They look like devotees. This Ramanandis, there are other Vaishnava, so-called Vaishnava sects, who think themselves, who think that the ultimate goal is Brahman. That because many are sentimental, they don't have a philosophy. We have a very deep philosophy. That therefore, with philosophy, without religion, without philosophy, sentimentalism, it's, Hare Krishna.
I think a part of it may also be that they don't want to be judged. They have this idea of that if there's a personal God, then people judge us. But if it's just an impersonal energy, then it's kind of like, who's going to say anything? There's no one to say anything.
Yeah, that's the basic problem of why we are here in this world. We want to be the controller, and we want to hear about the controller. Get him out of the picture. That the scientists also get God out of the picture. That science is supreme.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Then we read again this text 17. Though the clouds are the well-wishing friends of all living beings, the lightning, fickle in its affinities, moved from one group of clouds to another, like lusty women, unfaithful even to virtuous men. So the lightning is going from one cloud to another. It's compared to unfaithful women who leave a man who is actually virtuous, qualified. So why is a cloud compared to a qualified person? Because a cloud gives rain, it gives sustenance, and a qualified man also gives sustenance to so many creatures. And if such a virtuous man loses his wife, then he loses the base of the family. So this is 17, which will read from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. A prostitute cannot fix her attention on one man for long, even though the man may have good qualities such as intelligence. Similarly, the lightning moves from one cloud to another without lingering very long. This is a negative analogy. It's negative. Let's just have a look. So if Sanatan Goswami, this is text 17. Yeah, lusty women are not steady attached to even the men. They may be endowed with good qualities like intelligence. Yeah, that good. Not much comment. And then we have Shiva Goswami, text 17. Yeah, here. Lusty women are not steady, attached to even the man who may be endowed with good qualities like grace. Good, text 18. But maybe first read the text, the purport of 17, Srila Prabhupada from Krishna book. During the rainy season, lightning appears in one group of clouds and then immediately in another group of clouds. This phenomenon is compared to a lusty woman who does not fix her mind on one man. A cloud is compared to a qualified person because it pours rain and gives sustenance to many people. A man who is qualified similarly gives sustenance to many living creatures, such as family members or many workers in business. Unfortunately, his whole life can be disturbed by a wife who divorces him. When the husband is disturbed, the whole family is ruined. The whole family is ruined. The children are dispersed, or the business is closed, and everything is affected. It is therefore recommended that a woman desiring to advance in Krishna consciousness that peacefully live with a husband and that the couple not separate under any condition. Is that easy in Kali Yuga? It's a challenge. The husband and wife should control sex indulgence and concentrate their minds on Krishna consciousness so their life may be successful. After all, in the material world, a man requires a woman and a woman requires a man. When they are combined, they should live peacefully in Krishna consciousness and should not be restless, like the lightning flashing from one group of clouds to another. That's very practical advice of Srila Prabhupada. Not easy to practice. Text 18.
Krishna.
Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
I'm hearing you, Pavitra Prabhu, please.
Maharaj, can we compare the same to men who disappoint women, though like in the case of Ajamila, who left his qualified wife and go for a prostitute?
That's an interesting example.
Yes, Maharaj. Can we also
give of course, that it's not 100% the same. It's not that Ajamil was like a prostitute who went from prostitute to prostitute. He was attached to one prostitute. But it was the same disease, lust, certainly. Under the influence of lust, he left his wife. Yes, thank you. Good point. Let's continue. We have still some verses to do. Dano vichati maindram nirgunam sankuninnapat vyakti guna vyati kare gunavam pushunchata. When the curved bow of Indra, the rainbow, appeared in the sky, which had the quality of thundering sound, It was unlike ordinary bows because it did not rest upon a string. That similarly, when the Supreme Lord appears in this world, then which is the interaction of material qualities, similarly when the Supreme Lord appears in this world, and this world is the interaction of material qualities, is unlike ordinary persons, but he remains free from all material qualities and independent of all material conditions. So it's like the Lord is like a rainbow that. So the Lord is free from bondage of the eternal external potency. It's like the bow of Indra. That the rainbow is, Indra Danu. That Indra Danu, the bow of Indra, and you have the bow, and there is no string. That. And that's the point, that the string is the modes of nature. So it's string, it's strength with the cord, but not in Krishna's case. He appears like an Indradana. So we will read about this verse first from the light of the Bhagavat. Light of the Bhagavat, that page 40, that nearly there. Prabhupada's translation: in the midst of the thunder in the cloudy sky, there appears a rainbow that had no string. Its appearance is compared to the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his servants in the midst of material atmosphere. So, you have a beautiful rainbow picture in the light of the Bhagavat, and Srila Prabhupada writes, the Sanskrit word guna means quality or mode, as well as string or rope. When a rainbow appears during the rainy seasons, it is observed to be like a bow and no guna or string. Similarly, the appearance of the personality of Godhead or its transcendental service has nothing to do with the qualitative modes of material nature. The phenomenal appearance of the transcendence is free from the qualities of material nature, and thus it resembles a bow with no string. The transcendental Supreme Lord is eternally the form of transcendental existence, knowledge and bliss. The material energy works under his goodwill, and therefore is never affected by the modes of material nature. When he appears before us in the midst of material interactions, he remains always unaffected, like a stringless rainbow. By his inconceivable energy, the Lord can appear and disappear like a rainbow, which appears and disappears without being affected by the roaring of thunder and cloud sky. So it appears and disappears. The Lord appears and disappears like the Indradana. The Lord is eternally the biggest of the big and the smallest of the small. The living beings who are his part and parcels are the smallest of the small, and he is the biggest of the big as the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, also, Srila Vishwanatha Bhakti Thakur has a short purport. Just as the Lord, to dull without material qualities, a Gunavan, appears in the material world to perform pastimes, so the rainbow appears in the sky which has the quality of sound, gunini, and without a string, nirguna. This is a play of words. So, agunavan means without material qualities, and gunini is the quality of sound, and nirguna without a string. Different meanings. This is a verse for the Jnana, for those who are attracted to Jnana. That text 19.
Maharaj, we see something interesting that in Krishna's lotus footprints, we see this unstringed bow.
Yes, that's true. That's one of the signs on Krishna's lotus feet.
Also, another thing we could observe is that rainbows don't actually touch the ground. They're just in the sky, although they appear to, they look like they have an end somewhere.
Yeah.
So Krishna appears to walk on this world, but he doesn't actually touch the ground.
As a child, I wanted to go to the place where it touches the ground, but I never got there. That is true. So, Srila Prabhupada from Krishna book. Sometimes, in addition to the roaring thunder of the clouds, there is an appearance of a rainbow which stands as a bow without a string. Usually, a bow stays in the curved position because it is tied at its two ends by the bowstring. But in the rainbow, there is no such string, and yet it rests in the sky so beautifully. Similarly, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends to the material world, he appears just like an ordinary human being. He is not resting on any material condition. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he appears by his eternal potency, which is free from the bondage of external potency, which is the bondage for the ordinary creature, is freedom for the personality of Godhead. Interesting. Text 19. Naracha Jyotabhaschana Svayutsma Rachiter Kanai Hammatya Pasitaya Svabhasa Purusoyata. During the rainy seasons, the moon was prevented from appearing directly by the covering of the clouds, which were themselves illumined by the moon's rays. Similarly, the living being in the material existence is prevented from appearing directly by the covering of the false ego, which is itself illumined by the consciousness of the pure soul. So the clouds are full of light because of the moon. So what's the analogy? The clouds are are full of light because the moon is behind. So the light of our life is our soul, but is covered by the body and false ego. It is not a body that has life, but it's the moon shining through. Consciousness is a symptom of the soul. Now we read the purport of 19. That we'll see, but it's a long purport. So, the analogy given here is excellent, Srila Prabhupada. It's a point. During the rainy season, we cannot see the moon in the sky because the moon is covered by clouds. These clouds, however, are radiant with the glow of the moon's own rays. Similarly, in our conditioned material existence, we cannot directly perceive the soul because our consciousness is covered by the false ego, which is a false identification with the material world and the material body. Yet, it is the soul's own consciousness that illumines the false ego. As the Gita describes, the energy of the soul is consciousness. And when this consciousness manifests through the screen of false ego, it appears as dull material consciousness in which there is no direct vision of the soul or God. In the material world, even great philosophers ultimately resort to hazy ambiguities when speaking about the absolute truth, just as the cloudy sky manifests only in a dull and indirect way the iridescent light of the moon. So, in material life, our false ego is often enthusiastic, hopeful, and apparently aware of the various material affairs, and such consciousness encourages us to push on in material existence. But in truth, we are merely experiencing the dull reflection of our original pure consciousness, which is Krishna consciousness, direct perception of the soul and God. Not easy realize that the false ego merely ampers and dulls our real spiritual consciousness, which is fully enlightened and blissful. We mistakenly think that material consciousness is full of knowledge and happiness. This is comparable to thinking that the luminous clouds are lighting up the night sky, while in fact it is the moonshine that illumines the sky and the clouds that merely dull and hamper the moonshine. The clouds appear luminous because they are filtering and impeding the brilliant rays of the moon. Similarly, at times material consciousness appears pleasurable or enlightened because it is screening or filtering the original blissful and enlightened consciousness coming directly from the soul. If we understand that the ingenious analogy in this verse, if we understand that, we can easily advance in Krishna consciousness. So, great philosophers resort to hazy ambiguities that like God is light. Can you give other examples like that? Hazy, very, very hazy explanations that especially in New Age today. Can you give some examples?
One is that people, instead of, they don't want to say God, so they'll just say the universe. You know, the universe is supporting me, or the universe made everything fall into place, or something.
Yeah, or become one with the cosmic consciousness, or everything is energy, just flow with it. So in most of the analogies, the clouds are presenting ignorance. We will read from the light of the Bhagavad. So, at night, it is 42, just a moment. Yes, that's it. At night, by the grace of the moonlight, the clouds in the sky can be seen moving. Yet the moon itself appears to be moving, just as a living being appears to be moving because of false identification with matter. The body moves, not the soul. At night, in the rainy season, the moving clouds reflecting the moonlight make the moon appear to be moving. This is called illusion. The spirit soul, or the living being, is the root of all the activities of the material body. But because of illusion, the spirit soul remains covered by the gross and subtle material bodies. Thus covered, the conditioned soul identifies with the material body and thus becomes subject to false ego. This false ego obliges a living being to consider his material body to be self, the offspring of the body to be his children, and the land of the birth of the body to be an object of worship. Thus the living being's conception of nationalism is another type of ignorance. Because of ignorance, a living being identifies himself with the land of his birth and moves with the conceptions of national ideas. So Srila Prabhupada is here paraphrasing also a verse from somewhere else in the 10th canto that this verse where he speaks about camels, hogs, camels, and those who are identifying themselves with the material body. And,
It's 2-3-19.
2-3-19. 2-3. Interesting. Say 2-3-19.
The hogs, dogs, camels, and asses verse?
Yeah. That is 2-3. Yeah, that is. But I was referring to a verse of
Oh, the Swaeva Gokara verse.
Saiva Gokara, which is that it's in the 10th canto somewhere. Saiva Gokara. Saiva. Interesting. Is it in the 11th canto? No, it's 1084:13. Yasyadi buddhi kunapeti tadukesa di kalatrati subamrichadi yatirta buddhi salaina karchit shachnes abhyesu saiva gokara. One who identifies himself with the inner body, composed of mucus, bile, and air, who assumes his wife and family are permanently his own, who thinks an earthen image or the land of his birth is worshipable, and who sees a place of pilgrimage as mere the water there, but never identifies himself with, feels kinship with, or worship, or even visits those who are wise in spiritual truth, such a person is no better than a cow or an ass. That's also Srila Prabhupada uses certain parts of this verse here. So, in fact, however, a living being does not belong to any nation or species of life. It has nothing to do with the body as the moon has nothing to do with the moving clouds. The moon is far away from the clouds and is fixed in its own orbit, but illusion presents a scene in which the moon appears to be moving. A living being should not float with the misconception of the temporary body. He must always know himself to be transcendental to the bodily identity. This is the path of knowledge, and complete knowledge fixes the living entity in the orbit of spiritual activity. The spiritual living force is always active by nature. By illusion, his activities are only directed in relation with the body, but in the liberated condition of complete knowledge, his activities are conducted in spiritual devotion. Liberation does not mean stopping activities, it means being purified of illusory activities and becoming transcendental to relations with the gross and subtle bodies. So, this is a very powerful preaching to the Japanese people. It's really containing the essence of our philosophy. Very powerful preaching. Now we can look at the Sanatana Goswami, his commentary on this verse 19. The clouds are lit by the moonlight, not the moon directly. The ahankar is lit by the light of the soul. This defeats the atheist proposal that the jiva is just prana. The clouds are increased, rachitai, by the cool rays of the moon. This is the cause of the moon being covered. Similarly, the jiva gets covered by ahankar, but ahankar is revealed by the consciousness of the jiva. Or the moon covered by clouds does not shine by illumination of its rays. Since even the rays are covered, the moon cannot shine properly. Similarly, the jiva being covered by ahankar does not shine, does not reveal its true nature, though illumined by its own consciousness. And then we have here Vishwanath Thakur. So, in the rainy season, the moon does not shine, being covered by clouds which are themselves illuminated by the moon. This resembles the Lord Purush, who is not visible, being hidden by his avidya sakti, which rises from himself. So here it's another approach. Vishwanath said that it resembles the moon, that it resembles the Lord, the Purush, who is not visible, being hidden by his avidya sakti, which rises from himself. So he says it's covering the Lord. Yeah. This is a good example for the jnanis. Yeah, that's another view, different perspectives. We will read now text 20. Text 20. Meghagamotsavarishta pachamandam shikandina yeshu taptanirvina yatashuta sanagame. The peacocks became festive and cried out a joyful greeting when they saw the clouds arrive. Just as people distressed in household life feel pleasure when the pure devotees of the infallible Supreme Lord visit them. So when the rainy season comes, then you see the peacocks dancing, because they see the black cloud as Krishna. Thus they think Krishna is coming. Of course, that is in Goloka Vrindavan. The peacock is the friend of the cloud, and it's the friend to Indra also. We read the purport first of the verse. After dry summer season, the peacocks become jubilant with the arrival of the first thundering rain clouds, and thus they dance in great happiness. Srila Prabhupada comments, we have practical experience that many of our students were dry and morose previous to their coming to Krishna consciousness, but having come in contact with devotees, they are now dancing like jubilant peacocks. So, from the light of the Bhagavad, Srila Prabhupada writes, it's beautiful paintings of peacocks, nice peacock, 3 paintings that Srila Prabhupada writes. The duty of the sages and saints is to go from door to door and thus enlighten the householders in spiritual knowledge. Householder life is compared to a dark well. In a dark well, the frog cannot see the free light of the open sky. The dark well of householder life kills the soul. One should therefore get out of it so that he may see the light of spiritual vision. Srila Prabhupada is heavier. The dark well of householder life kills the soul. One should therefore get out of it so that he may see the light of spiritual vision. Saints and sages mercifully try to uplift fallen souls from the dark well of householder life. An enlightened householder therefore takes pleasure in the appearance of such saints and sages at his house. The mind of the householder, who is a conditioned soul, is always disturbed by the threefold miseries of material life. Everyone wants to be happy in his householder life, but the laws of nature do not allow one to be happy in material existence, since which is just like a spontaneous forest fire. And then Srila Prabhupada said, in the age of Kali, as described before, people in general no longer take pleasure in the presence of saints and sages, nor are they interested in spiritual enlightenment. Saints and sages, however, they all risk to propagate the message of Godhead. Lord Jesus Christ, Thakur Haridas, Lord Nityananda Prabhu, and many such sages risk their life to propagate the message of Godhead. The self-realized saints and sages take such risks for the spiritual enlightenment of the people in general. They do not take vows of silence meant to win cheap glory from the ignorant mass of people. God is satisfied only when his devotees take all sorts of risk to propagate his glories. So devotees are unafraid of the difficult journey to cross the ocean of nations. They are all anxious for the welfare of the fallen souls who are attached to the false enjoyment of materialistic life, in which they forget their relationship with God. It is a duty of the saints and sages to enlighten the fallen souls, and reciprocally it's the duty of the householder to receive the saints and sages cordially, as the peacock dances in ecstasy at the presence of clouds in the sky. The fire of threefold miseries experienced by materialistic man can be extinguished only by the clouds of mercy of the saints and sages, who can pour down the water of transcendental messages to put an end of the miseries of the householders. So the saints go to visit the householders, and they are happy to see them. So the peacock is compared to the happy householder who sees the saintly persons coming. Conversely, when a materialistic person sees a devotee coming, he presents he's not at home. He pretends he's not at home. There is another analogy. One who does not receive saintly persons, his home is like a serpent's hole. So there are three features here in describing the peacock: festivity, joy, happiness. So that is what happens to the peacock and the householders also. The next picture is that we have a very thin. The next picture, here in the light of the Bhagavad, you see a very thin tree there. The householders also. The next picture is, you see this very thin tree, which is blossoming with leaves. So that's text 21. Text 21. Pitvapa padapa padpir asannanatma muhtaya praksamas tapasa shanta yata kamanu sevaya. The trees had grown thin and dry but after they drank the newly fallen rainwater through their feet, their various bodily features blossomed. Similarly, one whose body has grown thin and weak from austerity again exhibits his healthy bodily features upon enjoying the material objects gained through that austerity. So this is an unfavorable example for devotees. Because after austerity, one becomes healthy again, and then enjoyment again. That's unfavorable for devotees. The purport. The word pada means food, and pa means drinking. Trees are called padapa because they drink through their roots, which are likened to feet. Upon drinking the newly fallen rainwater, the trees in Vrindavan began to manifest new leaves, sprouts and blossoms, and thus enjoyed new growth. Similarly, materialistic people perform severe austerities to acquire the object of their desire. For example, politicians in America, they undergo grueling austerities while traveling about the countryside campaigning for election. Businessmen will also often deny personal comfort to make their business successful. Just austere persons, upon acquiring the fruit of their austerity, again become healthy and satisfied, like trees eagerly drinking rainwater after enduring the austerity of a dry, hot summer. So Srila Prabhupada is comparing here that the skinny trees to the unmanifested living entities. When the creation comes and everyone appears, then he compares it to flourishing vegetation. So the Brahma Samhita says that the creation is like greenery in the rainy season. The rainy season is over and it appears. So we will hear that also from the light of the Bhagavad, second paragraph. The cosmic creation in its manifestation and non-manifestation resembled the creepers and plants that appear during the rainy season and gradually vanish when the season is over. Even when the plants and creepers are no longer to be seen, their seeds remain. And these dormant seeds fructify in contact with water. Similarly, the seed-like spiritual sparks were dominated by desire to lord it over the material nature, exist in dormant states after the cosmic manifestation is annihilated. And when the cosmic manifestation reappears, all the silent living beings within the womb of material nature come out and engage in sense enjoyment, thereby growing luxuriously fat. So then that is text 21, text 22. Sarasa santarodasu nyusir angapasarasa yesya santakrityesu gamyaiva drasraya. The cranes continued dwelling on the shores of the lakes, although the shores were agitated during the rainy season. Just as materialistic persons with contaminated minds always remain at home despite the many disturbances there. That the purport. So, during the rainy seasons, there are often mudslides around the shores of the lakes, and thorny bushes, stones, and other debris sometimes accumulate there. Despite all these inconveniences, ducks and cranes continue meandering around the lake shores. Similarly, innumerable painful occurrences are always disturbing family life, but a materialistic man never even considers leaving his family in the hands of his grown sons and going away for spiritual improvement. He regards such an idea as shocking and uncivilized because he is completely ignorant of the absolute truth and his relationship to that truth. So we heard the chapter before, the forest of material enjoyment. The forest of material enjoyment in the 5th canto. There were mosquitoes, jackals, getting up a thorny hill. All are compared to household life. The household life is full of pinpricks and that, yes, because we don't have knowledge, we stay attached to dust. So the point is, the cranes dwelling in their shores, the householders remain attached to their homes. So this is an unfavorable example. It's meant to be avoided. Next one is also unfavorable. We speak in 23 about the rivers again. Come to the rivers. Shalage nirabityanta sidva varsatishvare pashantinam asat veder vedamarga kalayata. When Indra sent forth his rains, the floodwaters broke through the irrigation dikes in the agricultural fields, just as the Kali Yuga in the Kali Yuga, the atheist, false theories break down the boundaries of Vedic injunctions. So, flood waters is breaking to the dikes. So, it is more like group floods. The other one we heard before were like the uncontrolled senses of a person, but here it is said the flood waters breaking through the dikes are compared to Kali Yuga, and Kali Yuga, the atheists break down the boundaries of Vedic injunctions. So the devotees are trying to stop the overflooding and breaking down of the boundaries of by the atheists. They are organizing festivals, preaching programs, and so on. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on this verse 23. Indra, thinking himself the Lord, pours down excessive rain which smash the irrigation walls in the fields, just as in Kali Yuga the materialists destroy Dharma. Kali is compared to Indra, the activities of the materialists to the rains, and the destruction of the Vedic Dharma to the destruction of dikes. So this is an unfavorable example that text 24. Vyamuncham vyaya virmana puttebhya samritam kanaya yatashiso vispataya kale kala tvicherita. The clouds, impelled by the winds, release their nectarian water for the benefit of all living beings, just as kings instructed by their Brahma priest dispense charity to the citizens. So the clouds are impelled by the winds. So the clouds are compared to kings, and the Brahmanas to the winds, which are pushing forth the clouds to do the right thing. They are advising the kings or the clouds to put water and to the kings to give charity. So Brahmanas are like kings giving charity. So like the Brahmins, the devotees also want to preach. The Brahmins impel the Kshatriyas to do the work, and devotees advise people to act spiritually. So the light of the Bhagavad we have here. In front of First, the translation. The wind carries the clouds to different parts of the globe, and the clouds distribute rains to the satisfaction of the people. In general, just as rich kings and merchants distribute their accumulated wealth inspired by religious priests. Now, in the second paragraph of Light of the Bhagavad, so in this age of Kali, when a slight difference of opinion leads to quarrel, even the extent of riots, it is the duty of the intelligence, the Brahmins, to selflessly inspire the richer people to sacrifice for this purpose. It is suggested herewith that the men of the intelligent class should not themselves strive to become Kshatriyas or Vaishnavas, nor should they engage themselves in the occupation of the various other classes. Rather, the Brahmins should simply guide them in spiritual cultivation, just as the wind carries the clouds to other places to pour water. The wind itself does not take up the responsibility for pouring water. So the clouds are impelled by the wind to bring water. The Brahmanas do not want to be kings or rulers themselves. They advise, they inspire, so the devotees advise, they don't rule. Although, in some circumstances, they may do. Now, we have text 25. 25. Evam vanam tad vashistam pakvakarjo jambuvmat go paler fitorantum sabala pravishat. When the Vrindavan forest had thus become resplendent, filled with ripe dates and jambu fruits, Lord Krishna, surrounded by his cows and cow boyfriends, and accompanied by Sri Balaram, entered that forest. So now we hear about the pastimes of Krishna performed in the rainy season. So, what were the chorus boys? What did they do during the summer? Swinging, singing. So, we will hear first Sanatana Goswami's commentary on this text 25. 25. The monsoon having been described, now entering the forest of the Lord's special pastimes, the goal of the rains is described. They entered the forest splendid with the rains just as described, or resplendent with beauty. Thou Vrindavan is the shelter of all seasons, with a wealth of all flowers and fruits at all times. At this time the forest was even more abundant with dates and jambu fruits. Krishna was surrounded by the boys because they wanted to protect him from the rain, each trying to cover him with their umbrella. The cows surrounded him with satisfaction, flowing with milk, having more affection for him than for their calves, as is offering him their milk. Attracting all minds, Hari, since he was surrounded by everyone, greedy for the beauty to his face, he entered the forest and remained there because of the beauty of the forest, Pravishat. There is also a hint that he did this every day during the rainy season. So, during the next 7 verses, we will hear the pastimes. Text 26. Tenavam mandagaminya udobarena bhuyasa jayo bhagavata huta duttam pritya snutastana. The cows had to move slowly because of their weighty milk bags, but they quickly ran to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As he called them, their affection for him causing their udders to become wet. That, 26. So in the Bhagavatamrita, Krishna in Dvarka has dreams about Vrindavan. And in that dream, he calls out the names of the cows. That, yes, text 27. Vanaukasa pramudita vanarachir madhuchuta chaladarhir nada asana datvisheguna. That the Lord saw the joyful aborigine girls of the forest, the trees dripping sweet sap and the mountain waterfalls, whose resounding indicated that there were caves nearby. That interesting. In the light of the Bhagavad, Srila Prabhupada gives a whole different translation of this verse. And I will read that translation. Light of the Bhagavad, it's here. It's 24. Here. When the Lord entered the forest of Vrindavan, all the inhabitants of the forest, both animate and inanimate, were eager to receive him. He saw that the flowers of the forest, all fully blossoming, were weeping in ecstasy, honey flowing down from their petals. The waterfalls and the hilly rocks were gladly flowing, and one could hear sweet sounds from the caves nearby. That is a different. It's a different translation. That good. Then text 28. 28. Vashit vanaspati kode kunayam sabivashati nirvishya bhagavan reme kanda mula falasana. When it rained, the Lord would sometimes enter a cave or the hollow of a tree to play and to eat roots and fruits. That so we'll read from Light of the Bhagavad, the translation Srila Prabhupada gives, that of this verse, nearly there. Yes. The Lord reciprocated the feelings of the inhabitants of the forest of Vrindavan. When there was rainfall, the Lord took shelter at the feet of the trees or in the caves and enjoyed the taste of different fruits with his eternal associates, the cowboys. He played with him and sat with them and ate fruits with them. So in the purport of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Sarta Darsini, he speaks about its roots and fruits. He says, when it rained, Abhivarshati, Krishna would run and enter the hollow of a tree or a cave and amuse himself by eating radish. There are two kinds of radish, round ones and long ones. So he says it's radish. That's long or round ones. But so now I will read from Ananda Vrindavan Shampoo. I will try to get that on the screen here. That page 100. Just a moment. So Kavikarna Puri. Very nice descriptions. That okay, nearly there. Page So, okay. Stopping his play, Krishna sat down on a large root under the shade of a tall tree. It is Ananda Vrindavan shampoo. To free themselves from the offense of subjecting Krishna to such intense sun rays, the clouds released tiny drops of rain that felt like a shower cooling camphor. Gentle, refreshing breezes scented with the sweet fragrance of malati flowers blew in all directions. In this way, the seasons served the Lord who forever enacts the sweetest pastimes. Standing in a threefold bending form, Krishna emanated the finest elegance. Placing his cow herding stick under his left arm, Krishna looked very attractive as he leaned on it and crossed his leg over his left. The flower garland hanging from his graceful neck gently swung back and forth, and chanting tunes and melodies echoed through the forest as Krishna played his celebrated flute. The cows extended their ears to drink the stream of nectar, and the male deer stood motionless, captivated by its sweet vibration. That go a little further. At this time, the joyful cowboys painted Krishna's body with colored mineral powders. As his friends surrounded him and happily danced for his pleasure, Krishna floated in a river of bliss. Then he wandered around Govardhan hill performing various ecstatic pastimes as Krishna's heart is full of rasa and decorated with the mark of Lakshmi. Similarly, Govardhan hill is full of beauty and a wealth of fresh fruits and edible roots during the rainy season. Krishna relished the sweet natural taste of the various fruits and roots brought by his intimate friends, whose hearts surged with happiness. Bound by their pure devotion, Krishna easily finished all the foodstuffs collected from Govardhan hill. With his white teeth shining attractively as he smiled in satisfaction, Krishna easily stole the hearts of every living entity. Krishna's friends quickly prepared his favorite flavored pan and betel nuts, pure white lime paste, fragrant juice of banana that smelled like camphor, and other items that they had previously collected. Thus being served in various ways, Krishna enjoyed his pastimes on Govardhan hill. And then so we could read from hours from Ananda Vrindavan Shampoo, but we go to text 29. Datyodanam samanitam silayam salislantike sambojanier bubuche kopai sankarsanam vita. That Krishna would take his meal of boiled rice and yogurt sent from home in the company of Lord Sankarsan and the cowboys who regularly ate with him. They would all sit down to eat on a large stone with the near water. So we have been there. That is Bochan's Stali in Kamyavan. There you can see where Krishna ate on the stone, with the commentary of Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur on text 29. Servants would bring food from Krishna's house to a place called Chak. Krishna sat on the stone slab near the water. Even today people can see that eating place on the bank of a kunda. That's the light of the Bhagavad. There it's mentioned how Krishna served all his friends and he ate last. are the last two verses of today. Satvalo parisam vishya sarvato militekshanam triptam vrisham vatsataram kasha vodo parashama pavichyam satam viksha sarvakala sukafaham parvam bhuchanam sakre atma saktyuba upabrihitam. Lord Krishna watched the contented bulls, calves, and cows sitting on the green grass and grazing with closed eyes, and he saw the cows were tired from the burden of their heavy milk bags. Thus, observing the beauty and opulence of Vrindavan's rainy season, a perennial source of great happiness, the Lord offered all respect to that season, which was expanded from his own internal potency. Purport: the lush beauty of the rainy season in Vrindavan is meant to enhance the pleasure pastimes of Sri Krishna. Thus, to set the scene for the loving affairs, his eternal potency makes all these arrangements described in this chapter. So after this chapter, after this rainy season, what comes? The autumn. And that autumn is a stage for the pastimes of the gopis. And for the moment I'm preparing chapter 21, which describes the purvarag of the gopis, with the attraction to Krishna they have before meeting Krishna, the purvarag. And then chapter 22 we will hear about the gopis doing austerities. After the fall there is Hemanta, the beginning of the winter. They do austerities to get Krishna as their husband. And then we will have chapter 23, the Brahmins, the wives of the Brahmins, and then we are back in the summer. And then in chapter 24 and 25, there we will be back in Kartik, in the fall, the autumn. And then the next section we hear is about Rasa Lila, but not in this part of, will be for the next batch of verses we will discuss on the 10th chapter. So in the light of the Bhagavad, it's described how beautiful Vrindavan is. That we'll read to end from the light of the Bhagavad a few parts that light of the Bhagavad that so there we have Srila Prabhupada's translation. The fully beautiful scenery after the rainy season was attracted to everyone, to the eyes of everyone, including Sri Krishna, the cause of all causes. Srila Prabhupada, we should always appreciate the creative energy of the Supreme Lord. Beautiful nature, even though material and therefore temporary, is always full of the glories of the Creator. Therefore, there is a class of philosophers who condemn the material creation as false. They say that Brahman is truth, but the creation is false. That is not good. So these are the Mayavadis. Jagat Mithya. And what's the illusion? The illusion is it's for our enjoyment, and we think this is going to be our permanent residence. Otherwise, the world is not false; it's real. It's an expansion of the Lord's energies. So the temporary creation is also a relative truth. It is in fact a temporary picture of the eternal creation. The forgetful soul has no information of the spiritual creation known as Sanatan Dham. But the temporary creation gives an idea of this original creation. The devotees of the Lord therefore make the best use of a bad bargain by utilizing the temporary creation in the service of the Lord. Everything emanates as different energies from the Lord, and thus everything should be engaged in His service only. As soon as even temporary things are engaged in His service, they take on permanent values. The purpose of such engagement in the service of the Lord is what the sages call shikichitan, or well treated. If we have some kind of trouble in the stomach from drinking milk, the physicians prescribe the same milk in the form of curd, which is nothing but treated milk. Similarly, the temporary creation of the material world is undoubtedly full of miseries, but when we accept it in terms of relation with the Supreme Lord, the whole thing becomes as well treated as the curd. Everything accepted in full God consciousness has its spiritual value, and by the grace of the Almighty, its material effects are diminished in terms of the increasing degree of spiritual consciousness. This is the process for cultivating the human spirit, Srila Prabhupada says. Good. Pavitra Prabhu, we are listening.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much, Maharaj. Maharaj, I want to refer to text 28 and 29.
Yes.
Text 28 says, when it rained, the Lord would sometimes enter a cave or the hollow of a tree to play and eat roots and fruit. And 29 says, Lord Krishna will take his meal of boiled rice and yogurt sent from home in the company of Lord Shankarshan. Maharaj, I want to ask, because one time I developed diabetes. Eating fruit before meal or eating fruit after meal, which is healthy?
Yeah, but I eat always fruits before, because that's digesting quickly. If you eat fruits after a meal, then it will, because the fruits are digesting quicker, they will intervene with your digestion. And that's best before. That's what I learned, but I'm not a health specialist. Any other point? That
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
It's funny that Krishna goes inside the hollow of the tree. I guess there must have been big trees that they would go inside.
Yeah, but there are these big banyan trees, and sometimes parts are hollow, and it's very big inside. So surely Krishna, it's all, the forest is all designed for his entertainment. So all play fields are there. That's what we heard also. Yes, it's all for Krishna's pleasure. The scenery. Any other points? Good.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, could you please explain this text 23? I'm not sure if I had understand it properly. Like in Kali Yuga, the atheists, they come into the boundaries of Vedic injunction. Does that mean like that?
That in Kali Yuga, the dikes that keeps people following the Vedic injunction are broken by atheists and other false preachers. And they say you don't have to follow all these things. You just follow this, what I have to say. That is what's happening. That they are breaking down the boundaries. No need to follow. Yes. And Srila Prabhupada was very heavy with Christians. Why don't you follow your commandments? The 5th command is, thou shalt not kill. Why you are not following that? They are breaking down. They give other interpretations for their sense enjoyment. And that's just one example. There are so many. That you can do whatever you want. That's the modern philosophy. If it feels good, you just do it. and they invented all philosophies. They invent all their philosophies to justify that. That's the warning of the Bhagavatam. Religion is not for sense gratification. Good. And we will hear more about this chapter, which is setting the scene.
Maharaj, this text 21, where it's talking about the trees that grew thin, and then later they, from their austerities, and then later their healthy features appeared.
Yeah.
It's very similar to the previous one. It's almost the same point, isn't it?
Yes. That like the rivers were overflowing, and then go beyond their boundaries and deviate. That so they after, or when one is emaciated during the summer seasons and then get results. That is similar. Yes. They are surely many are connected or overlapping. Sure. Good. Then tomorrow, see my agenda. Tomorrow we are Thursday the 8th. We have again the early shift, because there is again hermeneuticals tomorrow. Okay? Then our separation will be not so long. I'm looking forward to see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada.